Hey man, there's a turning point in every relationship where a woman realizes she can no longer control you, and that's when her definition of love suddenly changes. At first, she'll test you. She'll push your buttons, withdraw affection, create confusion, and watch how you react. She's not doing this consciously to hurt you. She's doing it to measure your power. In her world, emotions are currency, and control is safety. When she can make a man react, she feels secure. But the moment you stop reacting, the moment you stop chasing, explaining, or defending yourself, she loses her anchor. That's when fear starts to creep in, and to protect her ego, she'll rebrand her behavior. She'll say, "I only did that because I loved you." But what she's really saying is, "I only acted that way because you stopped letting me control you." Most men never recognize this shift for what it is. They hear her calling it love, and think maybe she's realized her mistake. But she hasn't. She's simply rewriting history to make herself look innocent. When she could manipulate you, she called it chemistry. When she could guilt trip you, she called it emotional connection. When you started resisting, when you stopped chasing, she started calling it toxicity. Women fear losing emotional control more than they fear losing love itself, because love, to them, is often about influence. And when that influence fades, they scramble to redefine it so they don't have to confront the truth that you've evolved past their reach. They'll paint you as cold, distant, unemotional, anything but strong. Because if they admit strength, they have to admit defeat. You see, the moment you stop being emotionally available to her manipulations, you stop being predictable, and predictability is what gives her power. When you were always trying to fix things, always explaining yourself, always trying to make her understand, she had you exactly where she wanted, under her emotional influence. But when you stop feeding that game, she's left talking to a wall. Silence becomes your greatest weapon, and it terrifies her, because now she has to face her own reflection without the comfort of your reaction to distract her. That's when you'll hear things like, "You've changed," or "You used to care." But the truth is, you didn't change. You just stopped rewarding her manipulation with attention. You learned the sacred rule of masculine power: never negotiate with emotional chaos. Her love wasn't love, it was control disguised as affection. Think back to when she showered you with attention early on. That wasn't selfless devotion, it was conditioning. Every compliment, every tear, every sudden withdrawal, it was designed to create dependence. She made you crave her approval so deeply that when she took it away, you chase it harder. That's not love, that's training. But what happens when the train stops obeying? When the man she thought she could emotionally cage suddenly becomes free, she panics. Her ego goes into survival mode. She'll say she misses you, that no one has ever understood her like you did, that she finally realizes what she had. But it's not you she misses, it's the version of herself that felt powerful around you. She's not in love with you, she's in love with the control she once had. And this is where most men fail. They fall for the performance. They hear "I still love you" and mistake it for genuine connection. But look closer, her timing always coincides with your indifference. When you were available, she was cold. When you pulled away, she suddenly realized your worth. That's not coincidence, that's strategy. Women's emotional patterns are rooted in testing your strength, not seeking your love. When they see that you can't be bent, that your peace no longer depends on their validation, they instinctively try to reattach by any means necessary. And calling it love is their most powerful trick, because love to a man means loyalty and care. But to her, in that moment, it means getting her power back. So don't mistake her tears for transformation. They're often the smoke before she rebuilds the fire. The real test, man, comes after she realizes she can't move you anymore. She'll try subtle tactics, emotional nostalgia, guilt trips, even self-blame, but none of it will land if you've truly detached. She'll start saying things like, "You're so heartless now, you don't feel anything anymore," or "You've changed." What she doesn't realize is that she's right, you have changed. You've reclaimed your center. You've stopped letting your peace depend on the unpredictable moods of someone who uses love like a weapon. She'll mistake that for emotional coldness, but it's actually emotional maturity. You no longer need to win her approval because you've already won your freedom. That's what she calls cold. That's what she calls distance. But in reality, that's what being a man truly feels like. And here's the dark truth. The more calm you become, the more chaotic she gets. Your stillness exposes her lack of control. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting her own insecurities back at her. She'll interpret your composure as indifference, your distance as disrespect, and your peace as punishment. But you're not punishing her, you're just done playing. You've realized that her entire sense of love was built on how much of yourself you were willing to sacrifice to keep her comfortable. Now that you're no longer bending, she's forced to stand on her own emotional legs, and most women can't. They thrive on response, on attention, on the tug of war between affection and conflict. When you drop the rope, the game ends. And when the game ends, she calls it heartbreak. But what's really breaking is her illusion of power. You'll notice that after your silence settles in, she begins to rewrite history. Suddenly, she remembers all the good things. She forgets her coldness, her manipulation, her emotional swings. In her new version of events, you were distant, you didn't communicate, you didn't care enough. That's her way of protecting her ego. Because if she admits that she lost control of a man who refused to be manipulated, she has to face her own immaturity, and most women never do. They turn their guilt into a narrative of victimhood. I only pushed him because I loved him, she'll say. But that's not love. That's ownership. That's someone mourning the loss of their emotional leverage, not the loss of your soul. The irony is, once she realizes she can't control you, that's when she starts to respect you. Secretly, silently, almost unwillingly. Because deep down, women crave the strength they can't break. They're drawn to men who stand firm in their boundaries, who don't react to manipulation with emotion but with composure. Your indifference becomes the very thing that magnetizes her. She can't label it, can't understand it, can't explain why she suddenly misses you more now that you're gone. It's because the game ended on your terms, and when a man ends the game without anger, only calm, it drives a woman insane. Because she's used to emotional fire, she's not used to peace. She thought she could control your love, but she never expected to lose your attention. So understand this, when she starts calling her past manipulation love, don't take it as an apology. Take it as confirmation. Confirmation that you've leveled up, that you've grown beyond her reach, that your silence has done what arguments never could. You forced her to face herself, and whether she admits it or not, that's the most painful experience a woman can endure, because she knows she'll never find another man like you. Not because you were perfect, but because you stopped trying to be. You chose peace over validation, clarity over confusion, power over approval. And from this point on, that's the only kind of love you'll ever accept. One that doesn't come with manipulation disguised as care, but with mutual respect disguised as silence. Eventually, she'll reappear, but not in the way you expect. She won't come back with open apologies or deep confessions. No, her return will be subtle, wrapped in curiosity, and disguised as innocence. A random "Hey, how have you been?" A like on an old post. A song added to her story that you both used to share. She's not testing if you still care. She's testing if she still exists in your world. That's how women try to regain psychological control, by seeing if they can still make you flinch. Because to her, your reaction is proof that she still matters. But when you don't respond, when your silence is calm, confident, and grounded, it hits her deeper than any insult ever could. She realizes that you've evolved beyond her emotional reach, that her favorite weapon, your empathy, no longer bends to her will. That's when her curiosity turns into confusion, and her confusion into obsession. You've become a riddle she can't solve, and that's what drives her crazy. She'll start studying you again, quietly, watching what you post, how you move, how you carry yourself. And what will bother her most isn't that you've moved on, it's how peaceful you look. That calmness cuts through her ego like a blade. Because peace is the one thing chaos can never replicate. She'll compare your energy to every man she meets, and no one will come close. The others might try harder, talk sweeter, or give her attention in abundance, but none of them have your restraint, your grounded silence, your quiet confidence. You became the ghost that haunts her mind, not because you linger, but because you disappeared completely. You didn't make a scene, you didn't beg, you didn't try to prove your worth. You just vanished into self-respect, and in a world where men constantly beg to be seen, a man who can walk away without explanation becomes unforgettable. The more you pull back into your purpose, the more she feels the void. It's ironic. The same independence she once praised in herself now feels like punishment when mirrored back at her. Because when you were chasing, she had balance. She was the pursued, you were the pursuer. That dynamic kept her ego alive, but now that you're not feeding that ego, she's starving. Her mind will start to rewrite what happened, convincing herself that you're the one who changed, that you suddenly became cold. But what really happened is that you stopped participating in the emotional theater she called love. You stopped explaining yourself to someone who was never listening, and for the first time she's forced to see that her manipulation didn't destroy you, it refined you. It turned you into a man who doesn't need to prove his value, because his energy already speaks for him. She'll start missing your discipline before she even realizes it. She'll miss how you didn't argue over small things, how you stayed calm when she lost control, how your silence could say more than her words ever did. She'll miss the steadiness you brought into her storm. But that missing doesn't come from love, it comes from contrast. Every man she meets after you will mirror her chaos instead of grounding it, and soon she'll see the difference between men who want her body and men who can handle her emotions. You were the latter, and that's rare. That's why she'll never stop thinking about you. You represented something her world doesn't create anymore. Emotional discipline wrapped in masculine calm. You weren't trying to fix her, control her, or compete with her. You simply existed with quiet dominance, and that energy once experienced is impossible to forget. But here's the most fascinating part. When she realizes you're gone for real, she'll start calling it love again. She'll tell people, "I'll always love him," as if saying it gives her moral redemption. She'll convince herself that her toxic behaviors were acts of passion, that her coldness was a test of compatibility, that her manipulation was just fear of losing you. This is her way of making peace with the guilt she doesn't know how to face, because if she admits it was control, not love, then she has to accept that she destroyed something pure, and that truth is too heavy to carry. So instead, she dresses it up as love, turning the man she couldn't control into the man she couldn't forget. But what she'll never admit out loud is that you were the mirror that exposed her, and mirrors are only loved when they flatter. By now, you'll notice something strange. You no longer feel the pull you once did. Her name doesn't sting, her silence doesn't matter, her absence doesn't echo, because you've detached not just from her, but from the illusion itself. You've seen behind the curtain, and once a man sees manipulation for what it is, he can't unsee it. You understand that love without respect is bondage, that chemistry without boundaries is chaos, and that validation from the wrong woman is the most expensive addiction a man can have. You've freed yourself from that cycle. You've learned that peace doesn't come from fixing her, it comes from mastering yourself. That's the secret every strong man discovers in silence. You don't need to win her back, you just need to never fall into that emotional trap again. What you'll realize too, is that her attempts to redefine everything, to call manipulation, love, and chaos passion, are her final defense mechanism. When control is gone, confusion becomes her only weapon. She'll try to make you question your perception, to blur the lines between care and control. Did I really manipulate her, or was I just cold? You might wonder. But you weren't cold, you were calm. You weren't cruel, you were consistent. You didn't withdraw out of pride, you withdrew out of protection of your energy, your peace, your focus. Because what women call connection often comes at the cost of your composure. And once a man learns how to love without losing himself, he becomes something women both crave and fear, unshakable. She'll tell herself you stopped loving her, but the truth is, you just started loving yourself more. Now she lives in quiet contradiction. She'll tell others she's moved on, but secretly she'll measure every man against you. Every dinner, every conversation, every moment of laughter will be shadowed by a memory she can't delete. She'll crave your steadiness when other men overreact. She'll crave your silence when others talk too much. She'll crave your mystery when others overshare. Because deep down, she's learned something she'll never admit. Women feel safest around men they can't manipulate. That paradox is what keeps her trapped in memory. The thing she once hated about you, your emotional control, becomes the very thing she now seeks in everyone else, and when she can't find it, she starts to understand what she lost. Meanwhile, you've moved on to something greater, not another woman, but a higher version of yourself. You no longer attract with effort, you attract with energy. You no longer talk to be heard, you speak to be understood. You've stopped trying to prove your value because you embody it. And now the kind of women who approach you are different. They can feel your detachment. They can sense that your peace can't be bought or broken. You're no longer seduced by beauty because you've seen how hollow it can be without character. You're no longer impressed by attention because you've seen how easily it shifts. You've become the man women remember long after the conversation ends, not because you gave them butterflies, but because you gave them silence they couldn't fill. So when she says, "I did it because I loved you," smile, not out of arrogance, but understanding, because you finally see what she really means. She loved the version of herself that could manipulate you. She loved the emotional control she once had. She loved the comfort of knowing your heart would always be open, no matter how many times she tested it. But now, that door is closed, and the lock has changed. The version of you that tolerated disrespect no longer exists. What stands now is a man who knows his worth, his power, his silence. And that kind of man doesn't get played. He gets remembered. Forever. In time, her regret won't come in waves. It'll come in silence. Not the dramatic kind filled with tears or apologies, but the haunting kind that lives in the spaces between her thoughts. She'll go about her life, laughing with friends, posting pictures, pretending she's fine. But every quiet night will bring that ache back. The ache of knowing she ruined something pure. You'll cross her mind in the smallest ways. The song she skips, the joke she doesn't laugh at, the smell that reminds her of your calm presence. It's not that she misses the relationship. She misses the man who could have given her the world but chose instead to give her peace. Because deep down, she knows she can find attraction anywhere, but connection like that, it only comes once, and she destroyed it trying to control it. What eats her alive isn't your absence, it's her realization that your silence means freedom. You're not waiting for her, you're not watching her, you're not bitter, angry, or hurt. You've detached, and that indifference is something no woman can emotionally process when she's built her identity around validation. She used to feed on your reactions, your jealousy, your frustration, your attention, but now there's nothing to feed on, no energy exchange, no tension to manipulate. And that emptiness drives her insane, because your calm isn't just the end of the relationship, it's the end of her illusion of power. It's the moment she realizes that all the emotional games, all the tests, all the drama meant nothing to a man who outgrew her chaos. You didn't lose her, she lost the ability to move you. You see, control is oxygen to the manipulative feminine. Without it, she suffocates. But peace, masculine peace, thrives in silence. It grows in absence. It expands in detachment. The more you focus on yourself, the more she fades into irrelevance. That's what she can't handle. She thought leaving you would shatter your world, but instead it rebuilt you. You got sharper, calmer, more grounded. You found purpose again. You started hitting the gym harder, focusing deeper, walking taller. And suddenly, she's the one who can't escape the reflection of her mistake. Because every time she sees your glow up, she's reminded that you were never the weak one. She was. She needed control to feel secure, while you only needed space to rediscover your power. You didn't just move on, you ascended. And now, from where she stands, that's unbearable. There's something powerful about a man who no longer seeks validation. It unsettles the entire female psyche. Because most women operate within emotional exchange. They expect their beauty, attention, or affection to yield a response. But when you no longer respond, when your calmness becomes unshakable, you stop existing on her terms. You become something she can't categorize, an emotional mystery she can't decode. That's why she'll keep finding subtle ways to peek back into your life. Maybe she'll message you under the pretense of closure, or pretend she just wants to check in. But beneath every word lies one question: do I still have access to you? And the truth that destroys her is when she realizes the answer is no, because access is power, and once a man learns to guard it, manipulation dies. At some point she'll meet someone new and think it'll finally erase you. For a while she'll even convince herself that it worked. The new man will chase her, praise her, adore her, everything her ego craves, but eventually it'll start to feel hollow. Because deep down, she doesn't want the man who gives her everything. She wants the man who made her earn it. That's the curse of losing a grounded masculine energy. Every man after feels too easy, too reactive, too predictable. She won't say it out loud, but she'll feel it in every conversation that lacks depth, every embrace that lacks stability, every glance that lacks certainty. You've set a new standard in her subconscious, one she'll spend years pretending doesn't exist, but measuring everyone against anyway. That's not your burden anymore, it's her punishment, the consequence of mistaking control for love and losing a man who mastered both restraint and emotion. And yet, in her most vulnerable moments, she'll still rewrite the story to soothe her guilt. She'll tell herself you changed, that you became distant, that maybe you didn't love her as much as she thought. It's easier to blame your growth than to admit her manipulation failed. But every time she tells that story, it'll sound less convincing, even to her. Because deep down, she knows the truth. You didn't change, you evolved. You didn't become distant, you became disciplined. You didn't stop loving her, you started loving yourself correctly. That's what drives her crazy. The realization that you didn't lose yourself when she walked away, you found yourself. You didn't crumble when the control ended, you built strength from it. That kind of transformation terrifies a manipulative woman because she can't understand love that grows stronger in silence. This is why she'll never truly move on, not because she still wants you, but because she'll forever be chasing the emotional control she once had. You were her mirror, reflecting her insecurities, her fear of irrelevance, her need for dominance. And when you stopped reacting, that mirror shattered. Now she's left staring at her own reflection, one she doesn't recognize without your validation. She'll try to rebuild her image through others, through social media, through fleeting attention, but it'll never fill the void. Because attention replaces distraction, not connection. And once she's tasted the calm of a man who doesn't break under her storm, everything else feels cheap. Every relationship after you becomes an echo of what she destroyed, a reminder that no matter how many hearts she captures, none of them will make her feel as powerful as controlling yours once did. You, on the other hand, have learned the most profound truth about power. It's not loud, it's quiet. Power isn't shouting to be heard. It's being so centered that silence does the talking. You've learned that the man who controls himself controls the entire relationship. You no longer seek to win arguments or prove points. You let people expose themselves through their actions, not their words. And that's why she can't reach you anymore. You've transcended emotional warfare. You've stopped playing a game she still thinks she's winning. And the beautiful irony, your peace now teaches her what your words never could. She'll never say it out loud, but she feels it every time she remembers how your calm dismantled her chaos. You didn't fight her, you disarmed her. That's why she'll call it love now, because deep down she knows it was the only time she felt something real. She'll tell people you were different. She won't know how to explain it, but she'll feel it in her bones. You weren't the loud, reactive kind of man she could predict. You were the silent storm that changed her forever. And no matter how much she tries to convince herself that she's healed, she'll never forget that shift. The moment she realized manipulation doesn't work on a man who's mastered his emotions. That's why she'll still talk about you, months or even years later, not out of bitterness, but confusion. Because she can't categorize what happened. You didn't fight her, yet you won. You didn't chase her, yet you left an imprint. You didn't try to prove her wrong, you just stopped participating in her games, and that realization burns deeper than rejection ever could. Because in your silence, she met the reflection of her own emptiness. And so, her story becomes a lesson, not for her, but for you. Because what she called love was never about connection, it was about control. What she called passion was a test of dominance. And what she called loss was karma. You were the turning point. The man who didn't play the role she expected. The man who didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't crumble. You walked away without hatred, without revenge, without explanation, and that's what broke her the most. Because you showed her the kind of strength she can't unsee. The strength that doesn't come from controlling others, but from mastering yourself. She'll spend years wondering what went wrong, but you already know nothing went wrong. Everything went exactly as it needed to. Because when she could no longer manipulate you, she called it love. And when you stopped believing her, you finally found peace. As more time passes, her silence will stop being a tactic. It'll become a prison. At first, she used it to test your patience, to pull you back, to see if you'd reach out. But when you didn't, that silence turned inward. It began echoing, whispering truths she didn't want to face. Every quiet moment becomes a confrontation with herself, with the parts she neglected, with the good man she mistreated, with the reality that she pushed away something genuine for something temporary. She'll scroll through her phone late at night, thinking about texting you, but won't. Not because she doesn't want to, but because she knows that the version of you she remembers no longer exists. The man who would have replied instantly, who would have folded under her attention, who would have forgiven her again and again, he's gone. In his place stands a man of silence, discipline, and distance. A man who no longer bends to emotion, but stands firm in truth. And that truth will begin to haunt her in ways she can't explain. She'll start comparing her current reality to what she had with you, and the contrast will hurt. The new men might be more fun, more expressive, more indulgent, but they lack depth. They lack that quiet certainty you carried in your presence. The way you looked at her like you saw through her defenses, the way you handled conflict without chaos, the way your silence could command respect. That's what she misses, not the romance, but the stability. Because in a world filled with noise, you were peace, and peace becomes addictive once experienced. But it's also the one thing you can't fake. That's why every conversation she has with others feels hollow, every connection feels fragile, every man she meets feels replaceable. Because the truth is, she didn't lose love, she lost her anchor. Soon, she'll start to romanticize the past, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. She'll replay moments in her mind, the late night talks, the quiet drives, the effortless comfort. She'll remember the time she felt safe, not because you said the right words, but because your presence said enough. That's what women don't realize when they're chasing excitement. That peace doesn't make noise, but it leaves echoes. And when that peace is gone, they start craving it in everything else. She'll try to recreate it with someone new, but the energy won't be the same, because peace can't be copied. It's earned through character, through patience, through composure. She'll miss that energy so deeply that she'll start to wonder if maybe, just maybe, she was the problem. That thought alone will keep her awake, because she'll realize she didn't lose a man, she lost her mirror. Meanwhile, you'll find yourself in a place she never expected, at peace with her absence. The pain that once consumed you will feel like a distant memory. You'll wake up one day and realize you haven't thought about her in weeks. Not because you forced yourself to move on, but because you naturally outgrew her vibration. You no longer crave the chaos. You no longer miss the drama. You become addicted to peace. You'll start noticing how quiet your mind feels, how focused your life has become, how free you are to think, to grow, to breathe. That's what detachment does. It clears the fog. And as that fog lifts, you'll see how much you tolerated in the name of love. You'll realize that love isn't about fixing someone else's emotional instability. It's about protecting your own. You'll finally understand that walking away wasn't the end. It was the beginning of becoming everything she couldn't handle. And she'll feel that evolution from miles away. Even without communication, energy speaks. She'll sense your indifference, your calmness, your absence of longing. She'll feel your peace in her gut, and it will sting like rejection, because it is. Not the kind that comes from words, but the kind that comes from reality, the undeniable truth that she no longer has emotional influence over you. Women who relied on manipulation don't know how to process that kind of loss. They can handle arguments, they can handle anger, they can even handle hatred, but they cannot handle being forgotten. Indifference is the death of ego, and yours has killed hers. That's why she'll suddenly start reaching out indirectly, maybe through mutual friends, maybe through subtle signs, maybe even by trying to provoke jealousy. But none of it will hit you the same, because you no longer live in that emotional world. You're not reacting, you're observing. And that terrifies her. You'll notice that every attempt she makes to reconnect will feel like deja vu, the same cycle, the same excuses, the same emotional bait. But this time, you won't bite. Not because you're bitter, but because you've seen behind the mask. You now understand that most of what she called love was her trying to regulate her own insecurities through you. She wanted attention, not intimacy, control, not connection. And once a man understands that, he can never go back to being blind. You'll start recognizing this same pattern in others. The emotional highs, the push-pull games, the fear of losing control disguised as affection. You'll realize how much of modern dating is built on manipulation disguised as love. But rather than growing resentful, you'll become detached. Not cold, just conscious. Because you've learned the golden rule: when someone tries to control your emotions, the best revenge is peace. And that peace will start to attract a different kind of attention. You'll notice women drawn to your calmness, not the loud ones seeking validation, but the quiet ones who see depth in your silence. They'll sense that you're not easily moved, that your emotions don't fluctuate with external chaos, and that's magnetic. Because in a world where everyone is desperate for attention, your indifference stands out like gravity. But this time, you won't be eager to give that energy away. You'll protect it like treasure. You'll no longer mistake excitement for connection. You'll no longer mistake lust for love. You'll crave stability over stimulation. And ironically, that's when the right woman appears, the one who doesn't need to control you because she's already mastered herself. The one who values your silence, not fears it. The one who adds to your peace, not tests it. When that happens, you'll finally understand why everything before had to fall apart. You'll realize that the chaos wasn't punishment, it was preparation. You had to be broken by manipulation to understand the value of emotional sovereignty. You had to lose yourself in her illusion to find the strength to live in truth. Every heartbreak, every moment of confusion, every silent night was sculpting you into the man you were meant to become, the one who leads with clarity, not fear. And when you meet someone new, you won't be desperate to impress her. You'll simply be. You'll move slowly, observe deeply, love carefully. You'll no longer give your soul to someone just because they make you feel seen. You'll give it to someone who makes you feel safe. That's the evolution of a man who stopped being controlled and started being conscious. But here's the poetic justice. The woman who once manipulated you will see all this, and it will destroy her from the inside. She'll watch you glow, grow, and evolve without her, and it'll sting deeper than any heartbreak she's ever felt. Because you didn't just move on, you transcended her. You became the man she always wanted, but could never handle. You became living proof of what she lost. And while she may pretend to be happy, every smile will hide that quiet pain. The pain of knowing she was the architect of her own downfall. That's the punishment of manipulative love. It always loses to real peace. And your silence, your growth, your indifference, those are the loudest "I told you so" she'll ever hear. So if you ever start to wonder whether walking away was the right choice, remember this: your silence did what words never could. It taught her, it healed you, and it revealed the truth. She didn't love you, she loved the control. But when you stopped feeding that control, she had no choice but to face herself. And that's why, when she tells herself she still loves you, what she really means is, I still miss the feeling of power I had when I could move him. But that era is over. You've stepped into manhood now, not the kind defined by dominance, but by discipline. You've learned that peace isn't something you get from a woman, it's something you protect within yourself. And once a man learns that lesson, no manipulation, no chaos, and no love disguised as control can ever touch him again. As the months pass, her mask of indifference will begin to crack. The confidence she displays to the world will start to fade the moment she's alone, because pretending to be over someone while secretly wishing they'd reach out is a form of self-torture. She'll scroll through your profile and see how unaffected you look. No cryptic posts, no desperate attempts to show off, just calm, consistent living. That calmness will hit her harder than any words could. She'll realize that you didn't just move on, you leveled up. You became someone she can't emotionally reach anymore. Not because you blocked her, but because you outgrew her energetically. That's the part that hurts her most, that she doesn't have access to the upgraded version of you. The man who would have done anything to keep her is now the man who wouldn't even entertain her chaos. You see, when a man detaches from manipulation, he becomes something rare, untouchable, not cold, not arrogant, just grounded. You've learned that the true power isn't in reacting, but in holding your frame no matter what storm hits. You no longer validate her confusion, you no longer chase her attention, you no longer engage in emotional tug-of-war. You become the calm in your own world. And ironically, that calm now becomes her addiction. She'll keep trying to recreate it, but she'll fail. Because no amount of excitement, attention, or affection from others can match the feeling of emotional safety she once had with you. You've become a standard in her mind, not the kind she can replace, but the kind that makes everything after you feel like noise. She'll try to distract herself, but peace cannot be replaced with chaos, and that's what she's left with now. endless chaos. What she won't tell anyone, not her friends, not her new partner, not even herself, is how deeply that silence is breaking her. Because silence forces her to confront what she did. It removes the noise, the excuses, the emotional justifications, and leaves her face to face with the truth. And the truth is simple. She broke something that was never trying to harm her. She tested a man who was only trying to love her. She played games with someone who never wanted to play at all. And now she's realizing that real men don't come around often, especially not the ones who can love deeply and walk away peacefully. That's when regret starts to turn into shame. But she'll never admit that shame. Instead, she'll mask it with confidence, pretend she's unbothered, maybe even mock you to others. But behind every joke, there's a tremor of pain, because she knows she failed the test of maturity. Meanwhile, your energy begins to radiate differently. You no longer seek validation through relationships. You find fulfillment in your growth. You've learned to channel your pain into power, your heartbreak into purpose. You wake up earlier, work harder, move quieter. You don't need attention anymore. You command it through presence alone. That's what masculine evolution looks like. And as you grow, something beautiful happens. The right people start gravitating toward you. New opportunities, new experiences, and women who see your worth without needing to test it. You start realizing that your energy was never meant to be wasted, convincing someone to value it. You were supposed to withdraw it so it could grow. That's why your absence hurts her, because your energy matured without her. You didn't just walk away, you evolved. And she'll forever remain stuck in the same emotional cycle you escaped from. Eventually, the same games she played with you won't work on anyone else. The men she tries to manipulate will either see through her or abandon her first. She'll begin to lose confidence in her old strategies. The flirtation, the distance, the guilt trips. None of it will feel as powerful as it once did, because manipulation only works when it's met with emotional desperation, and you took that energy away from her. You showed her what it looks like when a man doesn't crumble under rejection, when a man doesn't trade his dignity for affection. And the moment she realizes that she can't manipulate men who move like you, she'll understand the value of the peace she once had. That's the final stage of regret, when the illusion collapses and the truth becomes unavoidable. That's when she'll whisper to herself, "I shouldn't have tested him," but by then, you'll be far beyond reach. In your silence, she'll find clarity. Not because you taught her through lectures or arguments, but because your absence became the loudest lesson of her life. She'll look back and finally understand what real masculinity feels like. Stability without control, love without weakness, calm without indifference. You embodied something her world rarely shows her. Strength that doesn't need to dominate. Confidence that doesn't need to boast. And now, she's surrounded by men who either bend too easily or break too quickly. None of them have your balance. None of them have your restraint. You became the quiet example that redefined her entire understanding of men. And even though she'll never tell you, she'll secretly thank you, not for staying, but for leaving. Because it's only in your absence that she finally saw what a real man looks like. But here's the twist. By the time she realizes it, you won't even care. Not out of spite, but because you've outgrown the need for her recognition. You no longer need her to validate your strength. You live it daily. The man she once doubted now exists beyond her comprehension. You'll meet new people, build new memories, maybe even fall in love again, but this time from a place of wholeness, not dependency. You'll give without attachment, love without fear, lead without needing control. And that's when life starts to reward you, with peace that lasts, love that doesn't drain, and success that doesn't require validation. You'll realize that losing her wasn't a setback, it was a reset. A necessary detachment that aligned you with who you were always meant to be. And as your new life unfolds, hers will start to look like a loop. Different faces, same story. Different conversations, same outcome. Because she never learned what you did, that peace is priceless, and emotional games always lead to emptiness. You'll hear through others that she's still figuring herself out, still healing, or just not ready for something serious. But you'll know the truth. She's stuck in the same pattern, replaying the same mistakes, still chasing validation from men who will never match your presence. Her punishment isn't your revenge, it's her repetition, because while you broke the cycle and leveled up, she's still trapped inside the one she built. And that realization will hurt her more than any heartbreak could. Knowing that you became everything she pretended to want, but never had the emotional depth to handle. So when she finally gathers the courage to reach out, and she will, don't answer with anger or bitterness or nostalgia, just stillness. Because your silence now holds the power that her words used to. It's not about punishing her, it's about preserving you. She'll say she's changed, she'll claim she understands, she'll use words like growth and healing, but real growth doesn't seek validation, it moves quietly. And if her evolution was genuine, she wouldn't need to prove it, she'd just live it. That's why you don't need to respond. Because true closure isn't a conversation, it's a decision. And you've already made yours, to never lower your energy for someone who mistook your peace for passivity. That's not cruelty, that's self-respect. In the end, she'll understand what you knew all along. That love isn't about control, manipulation, or attention. It's about alignment. And when someone forces you to sacrifice your peace to prove your love, it's not love, it's bondage. You escaped that. You walked away with dignity, and that's something she'll never forget. Because while she may have moved on physically, emotionally, she'll remain tied to the memory of the man who didn't react, didn't beg, didn't fight. The man who simply let go and found power in his silence. That's the kind of man women never get over. And that's why, no matter how far she runs, no matter how much she pretends, one truth will always follow her. The day she lost you wasn't the day you broke, it was the day you were born.